Hello and welcome to IoT and IP Explain. I am your host, Claudia Tapia, and together with our guests, we will discuss topics in the areas in an easy to digest manner. I am passionate about IP and connectivity, subjects that I have been working with and teaching over a decade now. And along the way, I have been fortunate to meet amazing professionals who believe, as me, that knowledge should be shared, especially when it comes to topics that impact our lives every single day. We release monthly episodes, and you can continuously interact with us on social media. I invite you to grab your tea or coffee and join us for today's episode. The Internet of Bodies, the Internet of Senses, smart energy consumption solutions, remote surgery, industrial robotic, artificial intelligence, and so much more is possible thanks to the Internet of Things. The IoT allows for devices to connect to each other via the Internet, and estimates are that by 2026, there will be around 49 billion connected devices. Sometimes I think the IoT is like artificial intelligence. We get that the IoT is truly important, but not everybody really understands it. At the same time, I believe intellectual property is one of the pillars of the IoT. Understanding IP is crucial for innovators to avoid free riding of their ideas, but it's also incredibly important for those who build on ideas of others. The last thing you wish is to be shut down by someone else just because you did not do your homework before starting your business. A few months ago, I had a chat with Fernanda Donaire, who leads the coordination at 4IP Council. She told me, hey, there is this professor who has uploaded some of his lectures. He's amazing. I can understand everything. And of course, this is no other than Professor Adam Mossoff, whom I have the pleasure to meet today in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Claudia. It's a pleasure to be here.
For those who still don't know Adam, Adam Mossoff is professor of law at George Mason University, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to meet Adam today and to have these conversations. So let's go step by step. What is intellectual property?
That's a great question because it can sound a little weird to most people. Property and intellect, which usually we don't think those two terms as going together. We often think of property as in farms or in your bicycle or in your car or in your home. So what is intellectual property, which sounds like you're protecting like ideas. And we do sometimes talk in those terms, we're protecting ideas, but not literally. It's not literally true. You can still think about the world and come up with inventions and new ideas yourself. That's not what intellectual property stops. Intellectual property is the recognition that all things in society, everything that we use, at some point had to be created, invented, and produced. We have to learn what is food. We don't come into the world knowing a particular berry is poisonous versus another berry, or how to grow wheat, or how to husband animals, cows, and other types of creatures. And these are all techniques, principles that we have to develop, and we have to develop the tools, the plow to farm the land, the weapon to kill the animals, and then the tools to cook them and to eat them, our silverware. These things had to be invented and created. And it was quite an achievement by people a couple hundred years ago to recognize that those acts of invention are productive, creative acts that deserve protection just as much as the farmer, the homeowner, the owner of the computer or the car and things of that sort. That the people who create those objects that are necessary for our lives in a flourishing society need to be protected in their creations as well.
I understand. So how do we protect them?
Great question. And that is always the most difficult one. So we have created a series of laws in every country they have their own specific laws, and we try to harmonize them through treaties. And we protect the different types of creations and inventions. So most people have heard of them. Patents protect new inventions, new technologies broadly. The technologies in our smartphones, our laptops and computers, our automobiles, and other types of tools and things that we use. Copyright protects what we call creative works, the products of artists, movies, books, songs. So you listen to Taylor Swift, that is a copyrighted song. And then there's also a couple other types of intellectual property rights. Trademark, the apple with a bite out of it, that represents Apple computer, the swoosh symbol that represents Nike tennis shoes, and so on. These all represent the value that a company creates with its customers in producing goods and services, so that customers know what they're going to get when they buy something. So they know they're going to get a particularly high quality tennis shoe from Nike if it has a swoosh on it. And they know they're going to get a good computer if it has an apple with a bite out of it. And lastly, there is a type of intellectual property we call trade secrets. And this typically is business information, commercial information, customer lists, recipes, and things of this sort that are very valuable to a company that they choose to keep secret. And as long as they keep it secret and it's valuable to them and they use it in their business, that they will be protected to them. Some examples that your listeners may be aware of is the 11 herbs and spices used by Kentucky Fried Chicken is a trade secret. And no one knows how to, what goes into it. And there's many other types of products and services that represent trade secrets as well.
That's great. What about copyrights and trademarks?
Mm-hmm.
Can you give me examples of the IoT,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, for example, connected cars?
Mm-hmm.
That's something I think a lot of people are seeing already, or they may even have one.
Yes.
Where do you see the copyrights playing a role and the trademarks besides?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So copyrights will be playing a role, I think, at probably two different levels. One is the computer code that underlies the devices, the computer devices that we now have in our cars and our phones, things of that sort. That code is a type of language, and it's written down, so it's protected by copyright. It's also protected by patent in the United States, but we're a little bit unusual in that regard. Most countries protect software through code. So software companies, that are working with the automobile companies or with the operating system companies at Apple and others, are writing computer code to facilitate these new uses of these devices, of these new technological devices in our cars and in our computer devices, and they're getting protected in that code by copyright, which provides it's the same thing as a property right. It provides a certain term of protection for them to license and control the use of their invention, I shouldn't say invention because that's confusing, in their creation.
In their creation.
Yes. But then copyright will also play a role, I think, in facilitating the types of creative works potentially that will be distributed through the Internet of Things. So to the extent that you're using your car to listen to music, to have an audiobook read to you, to dictate while you're driving down the Autobahn or the highway, a memo, those are protected by copyright as well, as they should be. And again, this is a great example of how the property rights facilitate interaction and distribution. They're not blockades, as sometimes people think of them. They're actually facilitators of access, because it's the ability of the copyright in the audiobook for that person then to enter into a license with, whatever app developer that is developing the app to read the audiobook, that they enter into a license with, is it, I forget, is it Android Auto, is it called, or app, whatever Apple's auto system is called, for them to be able to then deploy that in that particular system. So you have all of these licenses and agreements that are facilitating access to this creative work. It's really important and it's significant, and it's what drives all of this incredible production of new products and services that we have incredible new ways to access and to enjoy as consumers. In fact, no one foresaw the streaming revolution that was facilitated by the mobile revolution. No one foresaw that. And no one foresaw what the streaming revolution itself brought, which was because you could have different platforms streaming to smaller groups of consumers, then you didn't have to have massive investment in the creation of new shows. And so we've had, I don't know if they call it what they call it in Europe. In the United States, we refer to it as the second golden age of television, where we just have a whole plethora of access of new shows in all sorts of new genres: historical, science fiction, drama, comedy. There's more content, creative content for us to watch than we could possibly watch now. And it's incredibly high quality. And so this has all been driven by copyright and patents. Now, you also mentioned trademarks and
Yes,
how
but
trademarks play a role in that.
before we
Yes.
move to trademarks, I'm
Yes.
gonna stop you here because I want to make sure everybody understands first what they need to do in case that they have a creation, as well as the requirements for copyrights.
Yes. Okay. So thank you. So for copyright, just like with patents, copyrights have certain legal requirements as well. Although in the United States, copyright applications are not reviewed and issued. So something, once you've written it down or created it, it's actually automatically copyrighted. And I believe that's the same in Europe and the rest of the world, according to a international treaty that's called the Berne Convention. So once something is written down and is as we say, fixed, is the legal term that we use, meaning that it's not something that is just floating in the air, but you've actually written a letter, you've written an email, you've written a book, you've written a song, created a movie, then that's now copyrighted. Now, you can still register copyrights, and in fact, if you wish to particularly sue someone for infringement, you do have to register your copyright. But that's not necessary anymore. So anyone who creates anything written, in fact, like this podcast, is as at the moment that it becomes fixed in the program in which we're recording it, is now copyrighted in our respect in our respective work. So and I'm transferring my rights to you
Well,
to use it. So but so copyright has what's called an originality requirement. Similar to it's somewhat similar to, but it's not exactly the same as the novelty or invention requirement in patent law. So it has to be copyrighted, it has to be new. It can't be something that existed before someone else has written before. Copyright also has a slightly different protection when with respect to other people's use. So in patent, for instance, you can infringe a patent accidentally. If there's a patent and you didn't search the patent databases and you didn't realize there was a technology, and you make a new program or a new machine or a new technology, it doesn't matter if you were unaware of the patent. If your patent covers it, you're infringing it. It's not true in copyright. So in copyright, if someone writes the next great book, War and Peace or something of that sort, if they just independently write it, then that's theirs. They've originally created it. So independent creation, as it's called in copyright, is a defense. So copyright literally protects only against copying, which is why it's called copyright. It's the right to control the copies. So you have to show in a copyright lawsuit, if you're accusing someone of infringing your right, that they actually had access to and did in fact copy your work. So so it has to be fixed, as I mentioned. It has to be original in some way, shape, or form. And insofar as basically it's those two things, and then you'll be protected in it. And the other difference, as I mentioned, is it's not reviewed; it's automatically protected, and for someone to infringe it, they actually have to have copied it in copyright.
How long? How many years do you have protection?
Copyrights in the United States are the life of the author plus 70 years. And then if you transfer a copyright to a corporation, or if through your employment agreement, you've written something down and as part of your employment, so it is owned by the corporation through your employment agreement. Well, corporations live forever, so it can't be life of the author because the corporation would live forever. So for corporations, it's just a straight 90-year term from point of creation. I have to confess, I don't know what the specific copyright terms are in other countries.
Well, we have, as you were talking, I realized we are giving a lot of information of the requirements, duration, and I wanted to point out that at 4IP Council, like the number 4, and then IP Council, there's one section, it's called For SMEs. And there we have a whole Excel table with different rights and explanation and duration and links to wonderful websites also that explain more in depth. So I encourage you all to go there.
Your website is fantastic. I use it as a resource all the time, especially the descriptions of the decisions, the patent decisions, and things of this sort are incredibly helpful and useful. And I found it incredibly valuable. So I just want to reinforce the importance of going to their website as a resource.
Thanks, Adam. I'm so happy you like it. And maybe now we can move to trademarks.
Yeah.
Trademarks and the IoT. Where do you see trademarks playing a role in the IoT?
So the significant place I think we're going to be seeing trademarks play a role is in companies using their goodwill with customers. So using the recognition of their trademark in ensuring to customers that these new technologies are exactly what they would expect in terms of quality and service that they had received from those companies in the past. So we all know Android and iPhone as kind of the basic, two core operating systems for our mobile devices, right? And so we've already seen Android Auto as Google has deployed the Android operating system into cars, and Apple has done it as well. I think it's Apple Car, I think it's called, right? And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why they call it Apple Car or Android Auto, because customers already know. I know as an Android user, I love my Android smartphone. I love it. I've always been an Android smartphone user from the very beginning. I had one of the original Motorola Droids back in 2009 with the little pull-out keyboard and everything. And I loved it. I know then if I see a car that says Android Auto compatible, that means something to me. That means that it will work with my smartphone and it will have certain capabilities that I know and love in my smartphone. And that's the exact function of trademark, right? The Android ecosystem has built up goodwill with me in terms of my expectations of what I look for in the use of these mobile devices. And so Google and other companies that use Android, Samsung, will be building on that goodwill and be working with car companies. So also BMW and Mercedes and General Motors and Honda will themselves also be relying on their goodwill and their trademarks with their customers, and will be working with technology companies as well as working with the underlying platform technologies that have driven these. So the 5G that has been developed by Ericsson and Qualcomm and InterDigital and a few other companies, they will all be working together to ensure through their goodwill and their trademarks that customers will be able to trust these products that are being sold and that the products will conform to exactly their expectations and the services that they're providing. And that's what makes it possible then for the companies, especially companies like Ericsson and others that invest the billions and euros and in US dollars to create the underlying foundational technologies, to do that, to make these investments, because they know then the products that will be sold because customers will be able to trust that those devices will work as promised.
Mhm. What about the requirements?
For trademark,
Mhm.
given that there are differences between inventions and goodwill and creative works, there's differences in protections. And so with trademark, what you have to have is a company that has been selling a commercial product or service in the marketplace, creating what the law calls goodwill, which is this reputation that a company creates with its customers with respect to the quality and nature of the products that it's selling or services that it's selling. That goodwill is a property right. It's been recognized as a property right. In fact, that goodwill is oftentimes the most valuable part of a company. As I mentioned it earlier, the apple with a bite out of it, that is the most valuable goodwill right now in the entire world. I mean, Apple is the most valuable company in the entire world. I think its market cap is over $1 trillion US at this point. And that mean that apple with a bite out of it is worth far more than even that in terms of what it represents to people. And so in sales of companies, when companies are sold, or if you're a small company, a startup or something like that, very oftentimes the goodwill line item in the transaction is by orders of magnitude bigger than the underlying physical assets that are being transferred in the sale. So that goodwill is represented by the symbol that we call a trademark. That goodwill is represented by this Nike swoosh, the apple with a bite out of it. But trademarks can even be more than symbols. They can be sounds. For those of us who are old enough to remember the old TV commercials for Intel used to run, where they did a chime, a three dong chime, ding 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 for Intel Inside. That was trademarked, because if I go ding ding ding, anyone who grew up 20 years ago, they're like, oh, Intel Inside. And the fact that we make that connection shows the function of trademarks and goodwill and the underlying products and services that go with it. So sounds can be trademarked, and even colors can be trademarked. So there's John Deere used a very distinctive color green on all of their products and services. And because of that color green is now trademarked and represents, because people associate, if you see a tractor that's green, that's a John Deere tractor. The red and yellow of McDonald's and the golden arches is trademarked. The golden arches are trademarked. Trademark law requires you to be actually selling a product or service in the marketplace that is associated with a particular mark or symbol or sound that is rooted then in this goodwill. And if you're doing that, then you will be protected from someone copying your trademark and trying to free ride off of all of the investments and commercial activities you've done as a company. So if someone tries to create another apple with a bite out of it, it's because they're trying to free ride off of, or as we say in trademark law, palm off, or steal outright, right? In more basic terms, that the fruits of the productive labors of the people at Apple and other companies like John Deere and others who've really worked hard at creating the types of quality products and services that they've created over the years.
Mm-hmm. The duration of trademarks?
So trademarks will last forever. No term limit on the protection, as long as you're using the trademark. If you stop using the trademark, or if you go bankrupt and go out of business, so you're no longer selling the products and services that are affiliated with the trademark, then the trademark protection is lost. The trademark protection is very much tied to the continued use of the mark in the marketplace to refer to products and services, because it's tied to that goodwill. And the goodwill is the reputation you have with your customers. If you're no longer in existence, you no longer have a reputation with your customers. If you're no longer selling products and services, you no longer have a reputation with your customers. Or if you're just choosing not to use that mark, you move to another mark, which we see companies do all the time. They change the natures of their trademarks. Then the prior trade, then the trademark is no longer protected.
I see. Designs.
Yes, designs. So designs are these are very interesting. This is kind of a subspecialty, or so in the United States we have design patents, and I also know in other countries they actually have just very specific design protections. And to be honest, I don't know a lot about designs. I primarily focus on patents, and I do some work in trademarks and trade secrets and copyright. So I know designs primarily through design patents in the United States, and also the fact that the United States designs are protected through copyright, because they're created works. They can be protected through trademark. So we can think of the swoosh as a design. So in the United States, we actually use different other types of property rights to protect designs in many ways.
Wonderful. So Adam,
Yes. Yes, Claudia.
that has been amazing. But before we finish, I have a last question. This is more a personal question, which is, which lesson learned you could share with your audience? I mean, you have an amazing career. You have gone through, I imagine, so many challenges, opportunities, and maybe you want to share maybe one little story for
I'd
me.
love to share a story.
Okay, great.
So I think a lot of the reason for where I am today is because of a particular approach I take to my life, that where my question that I ask of myself before I do anything, or if I'm thinking about trying to do something new, applying to a school, applying for a new job, considering a new opportunity in addition to a current professional opportunity, well, does it cost me anything to try to do it? Does it, do I, if I try to do it and they say no, am I worse off? And if my answer to that is no, then I try, because at the end of the day, I'm creating opportunities for myself in choices, and I can try, and I can ultimately decide maybe I don't want to do it, but then I have that choice. And I developed that attitude or approach to life, actually because I was almost killed in a car accident when I was 17.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was in a hospital for a long time, and it was I luckily came out of it perfectly fine, but it was a very serious event, and it made me really realize, that, you don't often when you're 17, you think you're going to live forever. It was a very eye-opening experience for me, to realize you're not going to live forever. And so it made me realize that, I really should pursue everything that matters in my life in a very active way. And so I often credit, like, my position as a law professor and things of this sort to my simply saying, well, let me try to do it. I mean, if they say no, I'll do something else. If they say yes, now I have a choice. I have an option that I didn't have before. And I think it's really important to kind of, for people to have that kind of value orientation and thinking about just pursuit of their values and things that they want to do in their life, because you don't get a second chance at this. And so you want to be happy and to be doing the types of things you want to be doing in your life.
That's a great advice. And I hope we don't have to go through these kind of experiences in order to follow it. And we learn from your experience. So that's one of the reasons we have this part of the question, so that maybe in each of our podcast episodes we can learn and become a little bit more clever in our decisions and actions. But Adam, this has been incredible.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed the chat with you. It was a lot of fun.
I understand we focus our discussion on copyrights, designs, and trademarks. So if you agree, I would love to do a follow-up on trade secrets and patents and then move it to the next episode. Would that be okay?
Yes.
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 But yes.
I
Now
would
we have
love to
to
come
do
back.
it.
Of course. Yes. Because it doesn't hurt me to try to say yes. And
Yeah, exactly. Now you have to follow. No other excuses. So thank you, Adam.
Yeah.
And for everyone else, it's been a pleasure to have you with us. I hope you have learned as much as I have with this conversation, and I look forward to your comments and suggestions. Understand. I would like also to see which other topics you would like to hear in this context on the IoT and IP. And with that, I wish you all a wonderful rest of the day. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you, Claudia.